America has a problem. There are no more small pickup trucks. Well, at least new ones anyway. And you might say, hey, what about the Ford Maverick or the Hyundai Santa Cruz? Well, in my mind, there are three main checkpoints a vehicle has to be considered a truck. One, an enclosed cabin, often called a cab. Two, an open cargo area in the back, often called the bed. And three, it has to be built on a body-on frame. And the third checkpoint is where a lot of these newer quote-unquote trucks fail the test. It seems as you look around today, every truck just keeps getting bigger and bigger as the years go on. But it wasn't always like this. Let's jump back to the year 1990. We have the Ranger, the S10, the Mighty Max, the B2200, the D21 Hardbody, the list goes on. And these things were selling like hotcakes. If we take a look at modern sales, the only good examples, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the Chevy Colorado. The smaller first-gen Colorado sold over 100,000 units combined between Chevy and GM in each of its first 3 years, peaking at 163 units sold in the second year, but then dropped off after that. The larger second-gen version showed up in 2015 and has only sold over 100K units every year. So with the Chevy Colorado selling so well, why aren't there more pickup trucks like this today? And that leads us to our first problem. And as I may have led you to believe the reason that these smaller trucks sold is because of simply its size, I was wrong. One harsh truth is that it wasn't because they were small. Instead, it was because they were cheap, or at least as cheap as any car of the same time. In 1989, Chevrolet's least expensive car, the Cavalier, had a base price of $7,375. But for just $99 more, you could score a base model Chevy S10. And I have a growing suspicion that if you polled numbers of men ages 18 to 34 at the time, 100% of them would have spent the extra $99 to get the Chevrolet S10. And it was pretty similar on the import side as well. If you wanted an inexpensive Toyota, there was the two-door Tercel for $7,338, but for just $660 more, you could have had the Toyota truck. Similarly, Nissan offered buyers the choice of a two-door Sentra for $6,849, or its hardbody pickup truck for $7,549. Who would want a hardbody for only $700 more? The allure of these trucks had little to do with their capability. They had little four-cylinder engines with barely over 100 horsepower, so they couldn't tow or haul much. They also had bare-bones interiors and really didn't ride well. But if you were young, most likely male, and didn't have much money, a pickup truck had much more appeal than a Cavalier. Today, those same buyers would rather drive a pickup truck than a car, but they can't afford them. The least expensive Chevrolet truck is a base model Colorado extended cab that starts at $20,055. If you're willing to drive a car instead, the same Chevrolet dealer has the Spark LS with a starting price of $13,000. Like the Colorado, the Toyota Tacoma is no longer offered as a regular cab, so the least expensive model is a base two-wheel drive extended cab that starts at $24,320. That's a tough pill to swallow when Toyota's Yaris hatchback starts at just $15,000. So to summarize this first point, the main problem is that cars are just so much cheaper than trucks are nowadays. But that's not the only problem. There's something you might have heard before. It's called the EPA. The main issue came down to the EPA's Tier 1 emission standards introduced in 1994. Here's what happened in simple terms. First, the new rules required all vehicles, including small trucks, to have better emission control systems. These were expensive to develop and install. Secondly, small trucks had to meet almost the same strict standards as big trucks, but they were sold for much less money. This meant manufacturers were spending a lot on emissions equipment but couldn't raise prices enough to cover the costs. Third, at the same time, gas was relatively cheap in the 1990s, so customers weren't as worried about fuel economy. This made it easier for manufacturers to just focus on bigger trucks where they could make more money. And fourth, small trucks like the Nissan Hardbody and the original Toyota pickup become more expensive to make because of the new emissions equipment. Rather than keep updating them, companies started making them bigger, like the Frontier and the Tacoma, so they can make more money to cover the costs. So while the EPA didn't directly ban small trucks, the regulations made the small truck market much less profitable for manufacturers. This pushed companies to either supersize their small trucks or just stop making them altogether. It's why trucks like the new Ford Ranger and Tacoma are way bigger than they were in the 1990s. Alright, so after going over some problems, we'll answer the question. Is there any way these pickup trucks can return? Yes, but they're not what you might think. And honestly, you might not buy them. Electric powertrains could actually help bring back smaller trucks since they're easier to make emissions compliant. Modern manufacturing techniques can make smaller trucks profitable again. Companies are realizing not everybody wants or needs a massive truck, and that's why I'm making a video like this just to get the word across. So with just a hint of that, what are we actually likely to see manufacturers do in the future? Well, they're not exactly going to be the same tiny trucks from the 1980s and 1990s, but they will be smaller than today's quote-unquote small trucks like the Tacoma. But they won't follow my 3-point checklist because most of them will probably be a unibody design. So while we won't exactly see copies of old trucks like the original Toyota pickup or Nissan Hardbody, smaller trucks are definitely making a comeback in a modern form. The success of the the Maverick shows that there's definitely a market for them. They just won't be the traditional pickups you and I think about. And if you stayed this far, feel free to give me a favorite story or a memory of an older pickup truck, or even just one you like. For example, I have a Chevy S10 currently, and I've had it for about 2 years, and I'm still rocking the crank windows. Alright, that's all for this one. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you like this video, consider checking out some of these other videos. Peace.